Okay, hi folks, welcome to the show. It's a prisoner broadcast special tonight. I'm standing in for Ben, who apparently has been sent to Coventry for some reason, I don't know why. But he's got business to attend to, so I've spoken to him and he's fine and looking forward to being back next week. And he'll probably tell us all about it. So keeping it in line the way Ben's shows go, I've stepped out of my normal comfort zone tonight. This is something the show's about Gerry Cannon and his quest, 20-year quest to recover the Ark of the Covenant, and it's something that I've had a special interest in for well over 30 years now. Goes back to a lot of the esoteric stuff and occult stuff that I like to get into, and just on that, with speaking to Ben, we are going to be collaborating sometime in the future. We're just sorting things out now. We're hoping to do a special show between the two of us on the ancient alien theory. Did the ancient aliens visit Earth at some time, or was there a civilization already present on the planet? And did ancient peoples receive knowledge and power from them? Who knows? There's plenty of evidence out there just in the monuments alone, pyramids, etc. Did they have the power of flight? Well, there's evidence of that as well. Renewable, infinite energy sources, powers of destruction that could basically lay waste to cities. All of that's there, all that evidence is there. So maybe I'm going to do a show about that, hopefully in the future. And that should be what to look out for. Just to get into tonight's show, I'd just like to, a quick mention, I won't harp on it too much because it's only fresh the details, but just like to mention our up today was in a court case. And another example of how corrupt this system is, and especially the judiciary, it beggars belief. The man spends thousands and thousands of hours looking at their documentation, their books, Black's Law, everything, you name it. The lad's done it, gone through everything. Presented his own case, defending himself. From what I can gather, and there's been basically transcripts taken by Pippa, and that should be put together hopefully shortly, and we'll see what becomes of that. But everything the lad had to say, he won hands down, I believe, and he just railroaded them, as we've seen before. But I've got a feeling that this only makes the likes of, I know Rob, personally, I think that only makes the likes of Rob more determined to go back at them. And no matter what the outcome on Thursday is, he knows he got all the wood behind him, obviously knows he got his family and friends behind him. But he'll come back, believe you me, he'll come back stronger than before. And he'll certainly have all the critical mass behind him. And I hope anybody listening will get behind him as well. Because this type of stuff, we need some pressing on this to start reporting this stuff. Because these are just making the rules up as they go along. Say, railroading people, treading over people's rights. And it's definitely not on my eyes anyway. And I'm getting a bit angry now thinking about this, so I'm going to move on because I might say something on it. We get it later. So, but Rob knows anyway. I don't need to say it. We're all with you, mate. You know that. So anyway, tonight's show. Yeah, what's it about? Okay, let's start. Gerry Cannon is a Cockney man, East End of London, born within the sounds of the Bow Bells, as it were. He's in his late 70s now, Gerry, and around 20 years ago, he's basically had paranormal or psychic events happening in his life. It'll be explained in the interview. And it led him on a path to start seeking the Ark of the Covenant. At the time, and this is one of the things I like about where Gerry's approaching this from, at the time, Gerry didn't even have a clue what the Ark of the Covenant was. When it was first mentioned to him, he thought it was the Noah's Ark. and he was saying, what's that got to do with me, if anything? And I had explained to him the Ark of the Covenant, and he was still none the wiser. He was still, that's got nothing to do with me. This is all nonsense. Well, through a series of events, psychic, paranormal events, hell of a lot of synchronicity in his life, he ended up going on a quest to find out where the Ark of the Covenant resting place is. Some people believe it doesn't exist at all. Other people do believe in it, not necessarily from a religious or a theologian point of view. Like myself, I'm not a religious person in any sense, but I do believe that ancient scriptures are true. I just think they've been misinterpreted, and we've been deceived by the usual suspects into believing something else than what the actual scriptures portray. But Gerry believes he's actually found the resting place of the Ark of the Covenant in the Western Desert in Egypt. Got a lot of facts, a lot of evidence to back it up. I know, and I've been speaking to a person tonight who believes that it lies somewhere else and a lot closer to home, actually closer to England than Egypt. But I mean, a lot of people have theories, a lot of people have evidence to back it up. So it's another theory, and it's a great story, by the way, Gerry's, how we come about. The Ark of the Covenant itself, what is it? Comes from the Bible. Anyone who's read or heard, and anyone who's seen a film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, I know that was a bit of an obvious insult there, but had to be done. Anybody who's read a little bit about it in biblical scriptures, for me, it's definitely an actual ancient artifact. There wouldn't be that much about it in such a tome. There wouldn't be so much factual evidence or description of it, especially how to construct it, right down to, what wood to use, how to line it, what size, everything about it. It's there in the Bible. Whether Moses built it or he stole it from Egypt, and that's why the Pharaoh followed him to the desert, that's open to speculation. What happened to it afterwards? We know that, going by the Bible, the Temple of Solomon was built to house it, and inside the temple was a special place called Holy of Holies, and that's where its resting place was. It seems to have been some form of ancient machine. I don't know how I can describe it. On all accounts, from both biblical and other historical references, it was, whether it was a capacitor, a transmitter, a receiver, it certainly seemed to have the power to store a massive electrical power or radioactive power. The Levites, who were the only ones who were allowed to bear, as it says in the Bible, not transported, they bore it, which is basically, it was in a state of levitation, and they just manoeuvred it to wherever it wanted to go. But they, going by the Bible, had to wear protective clothing at all times when in contact with the Ark, leather aprons, sandals, gauntlets, and it was always covered with some form of, whether protective covering or whether to stop or to prevent any of the followers of it from seeing it, because on all accounts the same effect from it was as in radiation. They broke out in lesions and boils, sores, the skin bubbled, blinded. Some accounts in the Bible, they evaporated. One famous one could be Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot's wife don't look back. She looked back and turned to a pillar of salt, as it says in the Bible. Or did she just evaporate? I don't know. But it's all there. It's reputed to have the power of everything. They are basically from levitation to resurrection, you name it, anything in between, it had the power to do. It's supposed to be divine in origin, whether from God Yahweh or whether from extraterrestrial beings or from a civilization that was already in existence on this planet. We don't know. The only thing I can really comment on about it, all of it, is that basically it was the power and the glory, what it says in the Bible. It was the power and the glory. And really, there's not much more you can say about it. I'm going to go into the first part of I've got 3 parts of this interview I did a couple of weeks ago with Gerry Cannon. Lovely man, very nice man, and to me, a genuine man, not out to make anything out of this, anything like that. It's just a quest, as you'll find out in the interview, seems that he has been forced upon. So I'll play the first part. See, the longest one's about half an hour long, this one, so you'll be prepared with it. But it's like two parts of the story, although it's in 3 segments, is that how he came about to go on the quest for the Ark of the Covenant, and then once he actually went to Egypt and said that he believes he's discovered where it lies, and also on his travels, this is a Giza plateau where the pyramids are, and to all intents and purposes, he's found a second Sphinx as well, which will be in the interview as well. So I'll start this one, and I'll give a little comment when this one's finished.
You're listening to Critical Mass Radio. Now it's our turn.
Okay, hello Gerry, welcome to the show.
You're welcome, thanks for having me. I know you're over in England and I'm down in southern Spain near Gibraltar. Gibraltar is more or less the inlet from the Mediterranean where the Atlantic comes in. And in fact, from on our beach, we can actually see on a hazy day the Pillars of Hercules. And in front of that is where Plato described where Atlantis could be. So we're in that area sort of thing. Okay, well, I better start off by explaining a little bit about the Ark of the Covenant, although many of you know about it, but maybe a few things you don't know. Okay, the Ark of the Covenant was made to put the 10 Commandments in, which were on tablets of stone, when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, and they went to a place called Mount Horeb, or Mount Sinai. Nobody knows exactly where it is. But the dates of the Exodus is a bit conflicting because the rabbis believe it was around 1313 BC. But a lot of scholars reckon it was 1440 BC. So there's around about 100 years discrepancy with the dates. First of all, nobody knows if it did happen or not, but we presume it happened because the Ark eventually went to King Solomon and he built a temple for it, and they know that temple existed, so apparently this all happened. That could have been the case, but there again, they knew how to activate it. Yeah. They would have known how to activate it. But all these are all theories. I mean, you know, the Bible's been changed so many times, even to the Bible I've got now. According to the Exodus, if you add up the figure and look on the internet, there was over 2.25 million people in the Exodus. Now, the numbers can't be right because, you know, for 2.25 million people to get up in the morning, women, children, old people and everything else, every day and to go through a horrendous route through mountains, there couldn't have been that amount. They've got too many zeros on it. It's impossible because there weren't that much people to have slaves in those days in Egypt. There weren't those people around to have slaves. You're talking about if there's 4 million people in all Egypt at the time, 2.25 of them wouldn't have all just been slaves. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but still, let's go on a bit further on. So that's basically, they made the Ark of the Covenant, and they put the crystals inside, and that's what it was for. And it was brought to, eventually, after so many years, Moses never actually got to the Promised Land. No. He died before he got there. But after it got to the Promised Land, there were a lot of different things happening to it. The King David's son, King Solomon, built the temple. And he built the temple round about 1000 BC. We don't know when. It was destroyed around about 400 or 500 years later, back in 587 BC. But it disappeared from the scriptures. And the last reference to the actual Ark in the Old Testament is that the ark with the tablets of stone, 10 Commandments, crystal, whatever they were, went inside Solomon's temple, and from then on it disappeared. And when you listen to my story, the theory is that the reason why nobody's been found, they reckon that the Knights Templars could have taken it. I don't know if you heard that story. Yeah. But they had carte blanche to be in Temple Mount for about 80 years. And there's no records of it ever finding anything. I know they must have picked up a lot of treasure and took it back to France, whatever. But the Ark of the Covenant, no. And when the temple was destroyed in 587 BC by Nebuchadnezzar, there's no sign that he took the Ark. Now, there is in Italy a monument, well, it's an arch of Titus, and he was the one who helped destroy the temple. And it shows on there the trophies, what they took from the Ark. And it doesn't show the Ark of the Covenant, but it does show that they had the big menorah. I don't know if you know what the menorah is, the big gold candlestick.
Candlestick, yeah.
Yeah, well, that was mentioned, but I reckon that was on there. In fact, I've been to Italy. You can see it on the internet. Look for Arch of Titus, and you'll see a menorah on there, and you'll see what looks like slaves carrying it. A few people each side carrying, not the ark, sorry, this menorah, because that was even heavier than the ark.
And that was in the temple. That was set in the temple, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was in the temple with the ark.
Yeah.
And I think the ark was more important to the Israelites, whatever it was, or whatever. But let's go on. Okay. I think my story begins when I was I'm retired now. I'm 77, born in April 6, 1935. And I think it all started, everybody says to me, why was I chosen? Why me or anything else? And the only reason, I mean, I'm only an agent. Once it's found, it's nothing to do with me. I don't want any glory for it. I'll come to the reason why the ark should be found and what happens to it later on. And we went over to America because we started selling pub mirrors. Do you know what the pub mirrors are?
Yeah.
Remember the old pub mirrors, Coca-Cola with little pictures in them?
Yeah.
Well, that's the business that we went into, and we were people had sticking on hundreds of pictures, and we made quite a bit of money. So the psychic knew all these things, and I was amazed that I had two psychics come up with things, and I really believed in psychics. The only thing is, I can go to a psychic, George, and have a fantastic reading. I can send you there, and you'll have a bad reading.
Yeah.
You know, psychics have good days and bad days, or they can tune into you, and if they tune into you, they pick it up, or if they don't. But I reckon if a psychic tunes into you and can tell you your past, then he's really tuned into you. So if he tells you anything about your future, you can believe a lot of it's going to be true. But if you can't get your past, then how's he going to get your future? Anyway, we went to Vegas. My wife's Chinese, named Mary, and it was a Chinese New Year. And we just bought a dream house in actually Las Vegas. We live in. We don't gamble. We live in Las Vegas. And I went into semi-retirement. And what I did was actually took a course in travel agency, and I was selling airline tickets from my house. I had a little office in there. But it was Chinese New Year, and I had a very, very strange dream that night of numbers. And not many people dream of numbers, and so I've been told, and I've spoken to a lot of people. But the numbers I got were 3, 6, and 9, and they were huge, floating around. It was like, I wouldn't say it's a nightmare, but it went on and on and on. I woke up in the morning, and I told my wife this. She says, well, 9 is a very special number, and it's a spiritual number. She says the Chinese used number 9 quite a lot. In fact, the emperor in Beijing, the old city, or the Forbidden City, anyone who had to see the emperor had to bow down 9 times. There's actually dragon monuments there, and there's 9 of them. And I don't know if you heard of Kowloon, which is a part of China, in Hong Kong. Well, that actually means 9 dragons. And we also found that 9 was a special number in Egypt and a lot of other things. In fact, even the Buddhists, I believe, they use 9 beads or something, but when they're praying, things like that. But I got into these numbers and I come up with a special number. I have to tell you this number because maybe some of your listeners out there might know something about it, and I think it's some sort of a code or something. But what I did was I played around with this number and I found that when you multiply 9 with any other number, it's always 9. 2 9s are 18, 8 and 1 is 8, 9 3s are 27, etc., etc. It's a very, very special number. But what I did was I went to the beginning of Genesis, the Bible, and I took the entity, or God, whatever you want to call him, and I took the 7 days of creation, and I divided the 7 days into the one creator. So I divided 7 into 1. I come up with a number of 142857 point. 1428.7.1428.757 into infinity. It did not stop. It was like an infinite God, an infinite number. But the 142857 was a special number because the cardinal numbers are 1 to 9, and you've got every cardinal number there except 3, 6, and 9. But when you add up the 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, and 7 together, it comes to 9. Anyhow, I'm sitting one morning in my office in Las Vegas, and on my office I had a large picture of map of the world, framed map of the world. And it was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was doing some work, and I just stopped, and something made me walk over to this big map, and I put my finger in near the centre of it. And I'm saying to myself, this is the centre of the world. Now, I took a ruler, a very long ruler, I measured it from top left to bottom right, bottom left to top right, made a cross, and I come up to a place in Africa, North Africa. And I put my finger on this spot, my index finger, and rubbing it around, saying, this is the centre of the world. What made me say, I don't know. And all of a sudden, my hand moved over, my finger moved up slightly, a couple of inches over to the right, and stopped in a place in Egypt. And as it stopped there, I'm saying something is buried there to myself. And I don't know why, and I have no cause to do that, because to me it would sound stupid. And as I said that, my finger started getting hot, very, very hot. And I pulled it away. I told my wife the next morning when she got up, and she said, don't worry, forget about it, you must have had a dream or something. I said, no, my finger got really hot, I couldn't understand it. She said, get on with your work, and I did. A few months later, my wife's listening to the radio in Spain, English-speaking radio, and she heard of a woman named Joyce Morgan. She came from Wales, and apparently she was on the radio talking about the work she'd done. We found out she'd been on television as quite a renowned psychic artist. Psychic artists don't really know that, but they draw pictures of someone who's died and then they'll give you a reading. You ever heard of a psychic artist? Yeah. And this is what she did. So I phoned up the radio station, got a phone number, I dialed the number, and a woman answered. She said, her name is Joyce. She told me she was on the radio. I said, can I come and talk to you, or can you give me some advice about my work I've been doing? And all I mentioned is, what work you're doing? I said, well, I started doing some automatic writing, and I haven't done it for years, and it's a bit confusing. And do you know anything about automatic writing to her? With that, she paused and she says, I want you to come and see me. I said, why is that? She says, I've got a lot of information for you, and I have to give you a reading. And I thought, well, how much? She charges this. She said, come on. I said, well, that's fine, Joyce. Well, what do you charge for your reading? She says, for you, nothing. She says, I normally don't charge people for readings. They donate to me or bring me gifts and that, but I don't want anything from you. You must promise not to give me anything. This is very, very special. I've never had this come to me before, but I want you to come and see me tomorrow. I said, where do you live? And she gave me an address about 80 miles away from us, a place called Fuengirola, which is near the airport. We live down in southern Spain, and this is Malaga's our closest Spanish airport. I said, well, first of all, my car's not insured properly. I'm waiting for insurance. Joyce, so I can't come tomorrow. And second of all, you live too far away from me. If I'm going to come up to you, it will be when I'm picking up guests or friends who come and visit us, and I'll pick them up at the airport. I'll come up and see you. Oh, no, she says, you're coming tomorrow. I says, no, Joyce, I can't come tomorrow. I told her my card name, Joyce. She says, you will be here tomorrow. And she went on and on and on, and I thought maybe she's a bit of a lunatic, pushing it too much. I said, no, and I hung up. 2 minutes later, my phone rang, and it was my insurance agent for the car. He said, your insurance policy is ready, and they're going to be sent to you. I said, how long will it take? He said, probably about a week. So in those times, the post wasn't that good. I said, no, I need it quickly, because I need to go to Gibraltar. I had to have my insurance to drive over there to do shopping, because that's where we do our shopping across the border. He says, well, the only way you're going to get it is to pick them up. I said, well, I'll pick them up. I don't care where it is. He says, well, the only place you can pick them up is in Fuengirola, and it was near where this woman lived. So I borrowed my friend's car, and I phoned Joyce up, and I said to her beforehand, I'm coming to see you tomorrow. Is that all right? And she chuckled. She said, I told you you're coming tomorrow, didn't I? And it was like she knew. So the next day, we drove up in my friend's car, me and my wife, and we picked up our insurance, and we went to see her. Excuse me. She lived in a like an old farmhouse in the country, and they called it Serendipity. She lived there with her husband Tom, and he did healing. By then, my wife was better, so she didn't need any healing. And after a cup of tea, Joyce said to my wife, come into the other room. She'd want to give her a reading first. I said, fine. I spoke to Tom. About 10 minutes later, my wife came out, clutching a piece of paper, and in her hand, she says, this is a drawing of somebody who she didn't know who she was at that point, but obviously it's someone who she knew, and Joyce told her that when she gets home, she'd find it. When I went in for the session, she says, this has to be taped. She got the old-fashioned tape recorder on with a cassette and taped it. She says, you'll need this for later on. I've still got the tape here now. You'll need all this information. And the first thing she said to me after closing her eyes, again, I see numbers floating around you, 3, 6, and 9. And then she says, looking for a gold box in the desert, and I'm going to draw it for you. And she sketched a box that looked like the Ark of the Covenant. I said, you know what that is? That's the Ark of the Covenant. She says, no. She said, I'm not religious. I don't know what the Ark is. And I explained. She says, that's just what I felt I had to draw. She said, then I'm going to draw your spirit guide. And she quickly huffed up a picture, a drawing. Did you see some of these pictures, George?
Yeah, I've seen them on the site. The drawing of
they're all on my website. They're on my website, which I'll give out later on so people can take a look of all these things. And she did a drawing of a biblical character. He had a lot of massive hair and a big V-shaped beard. And I said to her, Joyce, how do I know this is my spirit guide? She says, when you get home, your wife's going to check her picture out, and you'll check this one, and you'll realise this is the one. But I want you to come tomorrow because I want to talk about a lot of things and help you find this golden box. I said, fine, I'll come and see you tomorrow. That night we got home. I'm making my wife a cup of tea. She says, look, I just found a photograph of an old school friend. It's exactly the same picture. She forgot all about her, of the drawing that Joyce did. I said, well, is she dead? She said, I shouldn't think so. She's not that old. So she said, well, I'm going to call someone in England who knew the family and see whether they knew about her. She got on the phone. What white is the sheet afterwards? She says, it was my friend, and she died 4 years ago. So this Joyce had picked up everything. By the way, we went on to look at the drawing of this man who she drew, this drawing my spirit guide, and we found that in his right eye was a map of the Sinai or Egypt, of Africa, where the Ark was built. And this Morris said to me, well, I thought to myself, well, this could probably be my spirit guide. She knew what she was doing, but something else happened later on. Anyhow, we went back to see her a few sessions, and on one time she said, you know, I'm going to draw you a cave. This gold box is buried near a cave or in a cave in Egypt. and she drew a freestanding cave. I said, Joyce, I've never seen a freestanding cave. They're normally in mountainsides.
Yeah.
She got the pencil and she drew a circle over the top. She said, no, more like an igloo, like just stuck out there. And I didn't know why at that time. And then I said, well, how am I going to find this in the middle of the desert? She says, you will, but you're going to find landmarks which will prove that this is a cave. And the landmarks is this. Behind the cave is a flat-top sugar-loaf pyramid hill. And you can see it in the drawing. She drew it. It was in the drawing itself. And she says, in front of the cave is a dried-up river. The cave is going to be filled with sand. There's going to be all skeleton bones around it. She didn't know whether it be human or animal or what, but there'd be skeleton bones, a landmark. And the cave will have two entrances. And near the cave, one of the entrances, is going to be a huge rock in the shape of a tree. Enormous, she said, about 40 foot high. I said, Joyce, I said, if I can find a cave just that looks like similar, a freestanding cave, I'll be happy. To find one of the landmarks would be a miracle. To find all what was told me would more or less say that you're 100% right, Joyce.
Yeah.
She said, well, I'm going to tell you one other thing. When you find it, there'll only be one other person with you. If you go with a crowd of any other people, 3 or 4, you will not find it. It will only be for security reasons, only one other person is going to be at this cave. Then she went on and she says, you know, you're going to go to Israel soon and for a vacation. And when you do, you're going to find an ancient map. And either take the map or bring it or whatever it is, because it's going to indicate a lot of things about what you're doing. Yeah, we got back to Israel and we went on tour to different places. We went into one of the museums, and every time you go to a museum, they always, when you leave a museum, I don't know if you've been to some of these museums anywhere in the world, there's always a bookshop where they want you to buy the books and souvenirs. And I wasn't interested in this museum. It's called the Weitzman Museum, actually. It was where the President of Israel had a museum. It was one of his rooms, and it was all done up with all different art, different pieces, all numbered. And when we went into this on the way out, we went into this kiosk or little room, and they're selling all these things, and I wasn't interested. I wandered in the back behind the counter. I don't know what made me do it. There was an opening, not a door, not actually a door, but a doorway. And I went in, and I could see on the wall a big map. And I said to the guy selling it, I said, I'd like to buy that map. He says, you can't buy it. It's a special map. We don't know how. We've got everything catalogued in this museum, but we've got a number on it, but we don't know where it come from. I said, well, can I take a photograph of it? And we took it outside. I took a picture behind glass. It didn't come out very well, and I found out after that it was an ancient map of the Exodus, showing the Exodus route. So possibly this was a map that Joyce wanted me to find, because it was interesting. And another thing which she proved. But when we were in Israel, we went to see somebody who we met in Gibraltar, a professor from Israel, knew my work about the Ark, and she said that there's a psychic in Israel called Menorah, and if ever we go there, we should go and see her. So we called this guy up, the professor, and he said, yes, you go and see the last day. We went to visit her. Her name was Menorah, lived with her husband near Tel Aviv. And when we went to see her, she said, she's going to invite us there for lunch. She knows what we're doing, but she wants to find out more about this mosaic and everything else. But before lunch, she said she wants to put me in meditation. We went into a room. She put the tape recorder on. I still got the tape recording. And there's me, my wife, Menorah, her husband, and another woman, Israeli woman called Haggett. And she put me on a bed with a huge crystal, I don't forget, big crystal over me. And I must have gone off to sleep or whatever it was. And the tape recording afterwards, it was me channeling this guy Mosaic, and it was a big croaky voice. The voice wasn't clear. It never came through clear. Whenever I used to channel him, I channeled him a lot with Joyce. And it was saying that on my route to the desert, on his route to the desert, he passed a huge tree, a big tree. He didn't mention about a rock, he just said a big, big tree with a lot of branches on it. And I didn't know what that meant afterwards. But what happened was, Menorah, she'd never done it before. she went into trance. She said it was something after she was telling us that she's never done, because if she puts someone in meditation, she has to be awake to be with them, to guide them through it.
Yeah.
And she went into trance the first time ever. And when she went into trance, on the recording, it says, there is a Mosek. He did take the Ark, and he's there at the cave where the Ark is, and until it's found, he's the guardian of the Ark. And it's not time. This was back in 1998, I think, 97, when it all happened. And she says that he won't tell us any more information because its time is not right to find it, but it will come at a later date. So all that stuff seems to have happened. It was all right.
Yeah.
When we were back in Spain, one morning I'm walking our dog up the hill, passing a neighbour's house, and I don't normally talk to him. And there's a girl there in the back garden. I knew the guy, and his name was Michael. He said, "That's my daughter." I said, "Oh," she says, "Come from England." She said, "But don't talk to her. She's a bit funny." I said, "What do you mean funny?" It's your daughter. He said, "Well, she's always seen ghosts and spirits and things like that." I said, "Oh, that's all right." I said, I've done that myself, sort of thing. But I know a little bit about paranormal. With that, she waved, and she says, "Hello." She says, "Can I come and walk with a dog with you?" And I said, "Okay." And we're walking the dog up the hill in like a green belt, there's like a countryside. And as she's walking, she's told me her name was Dawn, and she looks at me, she says, "Do you know anything about Solomon's Temple?" And I stopped in my tracks. I said, "What made you say that, Dawn?" She says, "I don't know, but I feel that you're finding something from Solomon's Temple." And I've never spoken to anybody about this, especially the neighbours or anyone over here, because they thought I'd be weird.
Yeah.
And I said, "And what makes you say that?" She said, "I just feel say it." And she said, "I've got to go now." And she ran off. And she called back, "I want to come and see you tomorrow. I'm going to knock at the door. I've got something for you." She came the next day, clutching 2 pieces of paper. She says, "I've got 2 drawings. One drawing is what you're going to find." And she showed me a picture of the Ark of the Covenant. I couldn't believe it. I said, "What made you draw that?" She says, she says, "This is what you're going to find." I said, "What's the other drawing?" She says, "Your spirit guide." And she showed me a drawing, and I looked in amazement. It was exactly the same drawing, same sketch as what Joyce had drawn, of a man with a massive hair. Joyce was a good artist. She drew him good with white hair. She drew it with black hair, but yeah, because the drawing was all black when she did it, all black sketch, heavily drawn with a black crown, and she had a massive hair and had a V-shaped beard, exactly like the one she'd drawn, Joyce had drawn. And I quickly got a magnifying glass and looked in his right eye, and lo and behold, again amazed, was a drawing she did in it, and she only sketched it, she wouldn't know what she had done, with exactly the same drawing as Joyce had done of this map of the Sinai, or whatever it was. It looked like the Sinai. Did you see those pictures?
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen both sets of drawings from Joyce and the ones from Dawn as well, and they're basically the same drawings.
It was amazing. And I've got the original. Sorry, George.
As you say, Joyce is a better artist, but you can see the striking similarity between both sets of drawings. It's unbelievable.
It was unbelievable, especially with the map in the eye. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And I said to Dawn, "Is there a name for this spirit guide?" And she says, "It's a funny name." She says, I left school when I was 11 years old because my mother died and I had to look after the kids. I never had much education, but the spelling, my spelling's not that good, and it sounded like a letter M was on it. His name with a letter M. And I said, "Well, what did it sound like?" She says, "A funny name, I couldn't understand it." So I said, "I'll pronounce some names for her." And I said, "Was it Moses?" She says, "No." I said, "Is it Mosek or Mosek or Mosek?" She says, "That's the one, Mosek. Mosek." That's what it sounded like. and I was amazed that she come up with that story. We also met over in Spain. I was quite friendly with a woman called Janet. Janet was in her early 70s, and she was married to a Gibraltarian guy. Janet was from England, and she always helped me with the art and different things. She went on a lot of different courses for hypnosis and NLP and many of these different courses. She was always interested in all this sort of stuff, and she always used to come and chat to me. And she said to me that she knew a woman, an American woman named Mallory, and she was a map dowser. And she says, why don't we take the map to her? She didn't tell them what it was all about. She lived a long way away. And see if she can dowse the map for the Ark of the Covenant. So we went up to see her. I bought a big ordnance map in London of covering Egypt and Israel. Huge map's about 4 foot square. And we went to see her with this map, and she said that she could do the map dowsing. She'd have a go anyway. She was quite psychic. She had a lot of psychic books and everything. She knew all about ancient Egypt and all that. Very well learned woman. And she says that put the map down on the big table. And we just put on a big table, cleared the table down. And she said, you're looking for the Ark of the Covenant, are you? I said, yes. She said, well, I know what the Ark of the Covenant is. She knows all about it. And she took her right palm of her hand, put it up in the air, closed her eyes, slammed it down on the map, and it was in the same coordinates. Remember, I told him in the first episode, that I found the coordinates roughly in Egypt where the Ark could be buried.
Yeah.
And she slammed it down exactly that same spot, and I just couldn't believe it. It's a huge map. I mean, she could have put her arm down anywhere, hand down anywhere, but she put it there. She says, oh, my hand's getting very, very hot. This is the area. This is the area. And I thought, very good. And she came to visit us one time after that. And she went into meditation in our house. And she said that in a meditation, she says that Moses went into but she knew nothing about what I mentioned on the first episode about Moses. He might have gone to the pyramid and picked up the 10 Commandments tablets of stone from one of the pyramids. The Ark might have been in there, the original one. And she says that Moses has gone into the pyramid and had taken the 10 Commandments out. They were on some crystals, blue crystals, some very unusual writing on there, but it was some laws of mankind. And that when he took them out, he couldn't take out this ark, but he had to wrap them in leather because to protect them. And he carried them out, so that was quite easy what she come up with. Janet also mentioned later on that she met a man in England called Ballard, and Douglas Ballard, and he channeled Horus. I don't know if you know what Horus is. Horus is one of the gods in Egypt.
Yes, the Egyptian gods, yeah.
And he used to channel Horus, and she says to me, why don't I email him and tell him about the Ark of the Covenant? Maybe we can get some information. And I did, and I never got a reply. But about 6 months later, Janet said, I'm going over to England, and I'm going to see Douglas. Have I got any messages? I said, no, the guy never contacted me. He's probably not interested. Don't worry. She said, you've got no questions for him? I said, no, if you want to ask him any questions, you do it. I don't want to get involved. The guy's not interested. And she came back about 2 weeks later. She saw Douglas, and Douglas excused himself because the actual email I sent him went in his spam, and he found it while she was there. And he said he didn't look at it, so excuse not answering. But tell Gerry one thing only, and that is this. Tell Gerry about the Ark of the Covenant, one word, and Gerry will know what it means, what it's about. And I said, what's the word? She says, the one word is wandering. Wandering. And I thought to myself, wandering, and then I come up with what he meant.
You're listening to Critical Mass Radio. Now, it's our turn.
CMR Critical Mass Radio is a completely non-profit station where the hosts pay to broadcast their shows. The mission of the station is to get as much information as possible out to people about the world we live in, to unite like-minded people, and to try to come up with workable solutions. If you agree with the work that we are doing, then please feel free to help us continue by making a donation on the webpage. CMR is for people who want answers, because now it is our turn.
Okay, folks, welcome back to the show. Or come back after the first part of the interview with Gerry. I should have mentioned at the beginning, I should refer to the pictures and photographs on the Critical Mass Radio website. I think most of them Gerry's gone through there. It is interesting though, these drawings were done by two separate people, two different ladies, at two different times. Absolutely no connection between them. They both come up. I think you agree with the one that Joyce done of Mosach is a better artist. She's obviously a bad artist. The one that the young girl Dawn came up with, which is next to it, I mean, the similarity is unbelievable. And the actual, where the middle picture on the third row, which had the two drawings plus the eyes, which are enlarged, and what seems to be the area of the Sinai Desert, where Gerry found the freestanding cave. And at the bottom, anybody, I think Lisa mentioned before, it sounds like a scripture film. Well, somebody's picked up on that, and it's actually being made into a book at the moment. It's not finished, but there are, the very bottom picture, it's got Gerry's Arkquest, and you see a picture of Gerry there with the Sphinx and the pyramid in the background. If anybody wants to click on there is Gerry's website, Gerry's Arkquest, and you can actually listen to the first part of the book. They put it up onto audio format for people to listen to. So hopefully, I think that'll be getting finished and published soon. I've got to get updates on that. Just with regards to, I think it was Lisa and Paul mentioning Horus. It's where we get our present day hours for the day, and we get 12 hours. We get 12 hours if you rearrange the word, the letters of the word Horus, H-O-R-U-S, and turn it H-O-U-R-S. That's where we get our present day hours from. 12 hours of the day. Horus was the god of the day, excuse me, and he'd take 12 steps across the heavens or the skies from dawn to dusk, and then from dusk to the following dawn we'd get Set, who was the god of the night, and he'd take 12 steps obviously through night time and back to Horus. So that's where we get our 24-hour day and where that was from. Yeah, I mentioned earlier on, Gerry's not from an academic background. He doesn't come from the angle of he's an archaeologist, he's a researcher, or has great knowledge of anything, whether it be Egypt, the pyramids, the Sphinx, from a theologian or a biblical background where he delved into the Old Testament or anything like that. All of this was new before. There was an earlier part. It's just that I've had to cut the interview down to suit the show for time-wise. But it's nearly 2 3/4 hour interview, so I've had to cut a lot down. And there is a part earlier on where he does make reference to that before these psychic happenings started happening. He just didn't have a clue what any of this was about. So he is coming from a totally different angle from most researchers or people who have looked for the Ark. So it is a bit different. What I'll do is I'll pick the second half of the interview I've done with Gerry. It's about It's over 20 minutes long, I think. There we go.
And when we went to Egypt, I wanted to go to the Great Pyramid. And we got there about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And when I got there, I didn't realise I needed a ticket. My wife went back to the hotel. She didn't want to go in there because she heard it was a bit musty in there and a lot of crawling around. There's shafts in there and no actual big path to walk down. And it's quite low down. So I went up there, and the guard there in charge of the entrance said, I need a ticket. I said, well, I haven't got it. He says, well, I can't let you in. I said, well, what about, can I get a permit anywhere? So the only way I could give it to you is Dr. Hawass. But you heard of Dr. Hawass, haven't you?
Gerry Hawass, yeah. No.
Gerry Hawass in charge of the SCA, the Supreme Council of Antiquities. He said, but he's in America at the time. The guy spoke good English. He said, but there's offices around the back of the pyramid where you might be able to talk to some people there and see if they can give you some advice what to do. So he sent the guys with me, took me up to this place. We went into an area and then went into the office. And behind a big desk, there was an Egyptian still in there. His name, actually, I found out later, was Mohammed. Most of them are called Mohammed. His name was Mohammed Sheha. And in the office were about 7 other Egyptians all sitting around in front of this desk, on the other side of the desk. And I went in and he greeted me and I got friendly with him and I started talking to him. And he introduced me to another guy called Mansour Borak, B-O-R-A-I-K, who I'll mention later on. He was in charge of the excavations and that over there. And got real friendly, and all of a sudden the Egyptian walks in, talking away in Arabic, and his eyes lit up, Mohammed Shah's eyes lit up. He says, well, we can't believe it, but Sire Hawass has just arrived. And I said, that's wonderful. He says, you've come the right day, he's here. And we never expected him to come today. He's in the office next door. I said, well, can I get an interview with him? And he says, yes, he'll go in and have a chat with him. And he came out about 5 minutes later. He said, I'll see you in about half an hour. In that half an hour, I got friendly with all of these Egyptian top official archaeologists. I did some card tricks for them, a bit of magic, and kept them entertained with the different things. And we got on quite well. And in fact, one of them, I said to him, your wife's going to have a baby. And he laughed. He said, my wife can't have a baby. She's been to doctors for years. We've tried. We can't have it. I said, she's going to have a baby girl. And I just said it off the top of my head. A few months later, when I went back to Egypt, he told me his wife was expecting a baby girl. So I was more or less like Jesus Christ for them that way. So how do I know all these things? Anyhow, I went in to see Dr. Hawass. He says, am I an archaeologist? I said, no. I said, I'd like to go into the Great Pyramid. They closed. He says, why should you go in? There's millions of people want to go in, and I hardly talk to anybody. I thought there was something important. I said, it is. And I did something for him. I don't know whether you know when you put someone's arm up and you try and press down, you press and you can find out different things about the person.
Yeah.
And I just said to Hawass, I said, can you stand up and put your arm up and call out your name, Dr. Hawass, and you press you're a strong man, push your arm up and resist me pushing it down. And he did, and he laughed. I said, now, just mention that your name is John Smith. Tell me a lie. And do the same thing. He did it, and his arm went flat down. He couldn't do it, and he looked at me in amazement. He said, how did you do that? I said, I don't know, but it's a thing that we can do. There's a lot of things abnormal, paranormal, which we can't explain. And he says, okay, go in the other room and I'll get you a permit to go into the Great Pyramid. So I went to the Great Pyramid with another guy. I had to have one other guy. The pyramids were closed. I was the only one in there. And we went into the Queen's Chamber. The Queen's Chamber, the guy was telling me, was out of bounds even for the tourists who had tickets. They could not allow to go in there. They were doing some work in there. They couldn't. No one allowed. They took me in. He took me in there. And I always take a compass with them. And I went over to a northern wall. I went to the north because north always finds more powerful. It's like where magnetism comes in from. It's a strong point for the earth. I went to the northern wall, put my two hands up on the wall in front of me, above my head, and leaned on the wall, closed my eyes, and after a few minutes I felt my whole body going. I got frightened. I thought I was going to disappear in the wall. And I said to the guy with me, I forget his name, I said, can you do that? And he did it, and he went white. He says, no, he says, I'm getting out of here, something's going on, I'm frightened. We went out, and that was that. So something quite important was in these walls or whatever. And they introduced me to, Dr. West had then gone, but they introduced me to, in another office there, to a guy called Adel Hussain. Adel Hussain was in charge, he was the director of the Giza pyramids. And we got him into him, and I got talking to him, and I did the same thing I did on Hawass, because he told me he had his bad arm, he could never raise it above his eye level. And I did it, and I did this thing, and I said, put your arm up, and it went up. And he looked in amazement, called his secretary, and he said, look what Gerry's doing, I've been to doctors and everything, and he's cured me. With that, I got very friendly with him, and he wanted to see some pictures I had. I said, they're in the hotel room, so he said, take my driver, and he'll chauffeur me to my hotel and bring me back and do things. And I got friendly with the guy. He said, whenever you come to Egypt, you can come and see me. Okay. After that trip to Egypt, we went back, and I thought, I have to go again and start looking for this art without my wife. I can't go in the desert. I don't know what to do. So I looked on the internet, and I found that there was a website of a society or club or whatever it was, where people go out to different coordinates, and what they do when they get there, it's like the man on the moon. They get to the coordinates, put in a marker there, put a name on it or whatever, and say, I'm the first one to visit. Let's say they want to go to 20 degrees north and 20 degrees east, whatever it is. They get to that specific point, put their marker in, take photographs. Well, one of them come up with an area near where I was looking for this cave. And I thought, well, if I can find something to signify it, I'll have a look. And he had some pictures, and one of the pictures showed a pyramid-shaped mountain where this coordinates was. And I thought, wow, we found it. It's a hill that looks like it's got a flat top, exactly like I'm supposed to find. So I contacted the guy, and he told me where it was. He said, it's way out in the desert. He said, you need a 4x4 to get there, and you can't go alone. You need 2 4x4s, because once you break down, you'll be dead. You'll never find your way back. He says, but you have to go out. There's some monks living in caves, some Coptic monks. Coptic's the ancient, the old Christians.
Yeah,
Coptic.
Orthodox, yeah.
And they're living in caves, and they've got a monastery there. The monasteries have been there for years, and they go out there. There's a group of them there, and you can pass that way, and there's other monasteries further south which you can also get to. There's 2 ways of getting there. And I gone on the internet, and I made some friends. A guy named Richard Gabriel, he was a good guy, and he was interested in the Ark, and he said we should go out there and get a team together. And we've got a guy from Wales named Howard, and another guy from Canada named Jim, and a photographer from Switzerland. It was a bit of an international group. He had the cameras and all that stuff. He says, let's go out and see if we can find this. I said, fine. None of them had much money, but a particular photographer had some money anyway. And we paid our own way, and we said we're going to meet over in one of the hostels in Cairo, and then hire a couple of 4x4s, and then go out in the desert and see if we can find it with my big map. Actually, Richard said his girlfriend's coming over from America, and he has to be back in Cairo, so they can only go out for so many days in the desert, because he's got to be back to meet his girlfriend. They're more interested to see the pyramids and all that stuff. So it's fine. And we spent time with them, and then day before we left, we thought, well, we now better go and look for this cave. So we drove out, 2 of us, 2 vehicles, in the area where we wanted to go. One of us had Howard had GPS with him, so we knew roughly where we were going. When we got about 5 miles away from there, the actual place, a sandstorm blew up, and we couldn't get there. But we climbed up one of the sand dunes, about 20-foot high sand dune, and over the top in the distance, even through the haze of them, we could see a sort of a tall hill, mountain, whatever it was. We thought that's the one we've got to get to. So we made a pact that we would go back to Egypt another time. We never had time now. We had to go back to get this girlfriend the following day, and also want to do other things in Egypt. But they said we'd all go back a year later, and we agreed. When we left, we got back, picked up with this girl named Jodie, and I took them to the pyramids and introduced them to Adele Hussain, in charge of the pyramid. I said to him, can you get my friends going? Well, actually, it's Jim and Richard and his girlfriend and Howard came with us. The other two went off somewhere else. And I said, can you get us permission to go into the pyramids? He says, yes, I'd also like to go into the second pyramid. He said, no problem. So we went out, and the pyramids hadn't closed down, so we had to hang around, and we had a guide with us. We sent the guide with us to take us in there. And we went into the second pyramid. You know, there's three pyramids: the Great Pyramid, the Second Pyramid, the smaller one.
Yeah,
you know that?
Yeah.
When I went to the second pyramid, I said to Adele, Adele, and I don't know what made me say it, I said, Adele, when I come out of the second pyramid, I'm going to come and see you, and I'm going to give you some information about the Sphinx. He says, what information? I said, I don't know. He said, what made you say that? I said, I've got no idea. I just know I have to give you some information about the second Sphinx. And he laughed. They all laughed. Anyway, we went into the second pyramid.
Okay.
When I come out, I realise that the Sphinx is not in. The Sphinx is about 600 metres away from the pyramid on an incline going down, and it's not in the centre of the pyramid. I don't know whether you noticed that.
Yeah, it's
over to the left.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the head of the Sphinx towards the pyramid, it's to the left-hand side, not in the centre.
Yeah, it's a causeway.
There's a causeway, and I'm saying to myself, there's another Sphinx here. And I looked down from the pyramid, and I could see the Sphinx and the causeway, the road, and on the other side of the road was a mound. And I thought to myself, there's a Sphinx buried under this mound. So we went into the Great Pyramid afterwards, and Richard had his picture taken laying inside there's a big stone.
The
sarcophagus. Yeah, he took a picture in there. It's quite good. We come out. I went back to see Adele. And I said, Adele, there's a big mound down there, and I think there's another Sphinx. He said, what makes you say that? I said, because Sphinx, food dogs are in guard. The Sphinx is guarding something. And if it's guarding something, there could possibly be two of them, like food dogs in China, where they always have a male and a female, either side of the entrances and all that there. And I said, what's under that mound? And he says, well, the mound has been examined to the left of it. That they found a lot of tombs. But the actual place I'm looking at, as far as he knows, no one has ever been there to examine it. I says, why is that? He said, well, there was nothing for them to look for. I said, well, there's another Sphinx. He says, possible. He says, that is possible. There could be. He says, I might even be right. And, I thought this could be it. Anyhow, when we left Egypt, we also met I was introduced to another guy called Mohammed Bakr. Mohammed Bakr had Hawas's job before Hawass took over, and I got real friendly with this guy. In fact, he introduced me to all the high executives and everything else, and even to this day I always call him every few weeks, want to know when I'm coming over. He wants to help me with the work and this, that and the other. And when we left, we were staying in this hostel. Jodie, Richard's girlfriend, come up with a story that when I paid the bill, I overcharged them, which I would never have done because none of us had any money. It was a thing I would never have done. She said, we overcharged you $100 or something. I said, no way, Jodie. But I think it was as a prefabricated because she wanted an excuse to go into Egypt without me. And I found that 3 months later, they both went to Egypt with Jim from Canada without telling me. They went to find the Ark for their own purpose. And I was very, very upset when I heard this. And apparently, when they went there, Jim got ill, and they got to the monks' cave, where the monks were living, and they couldn't get out to the air for this hill. Then I believe that Richard went again with his girlfriend Jodie on another time, and he was ill or something happened. They couldn't get to it. For some reason they couldn't get it. And I realised afterwards that Joyce told me there'd only be 2 people, another person with me. So they weren't meant to go to this area. Richard, I tried to get friendly with him, even though he did that. I mean, I try and get friendly with these people, even though he did the dirty on me sort of thing. But Jodie said no, nothing to do with me. But apparently he's doing some good work. I mean, I've got to say this to him. They're both doing some good work over there, trying to find, examining the pyramids and what's underneath it, and the Sphinx and all that stuff itself. So let them get on with their own work. Okay, we went back again. A year later, or about 9 months later, and this time I went back just with a driver, and it was amazing how I found it. You'd have to go on my internet and read the whole story. It could all be read there, and a lot of things I can't talk about because we haven't got time. But I went out with this driver, only one person, that's me, only one person with me, and we had a look around. And I wanted to go out in the desert to go to a place called the Bahrain Oasis. I don't know if you heard about that. It was a place where the Dr. Hawass, or actually my friend Borak, was in charge at the time of that area, and they were doing excavations, and they found thousands of golden mummies. You know about that? Yeah. And it was more like a treasure trove. And apparently the guy who was in charge was more like a pharaoh. He actually was a governor. He was like just as good as a pharaoh. In fact, the people apparently respected him as a pharaoh. And he was a wealthy man collecting, and it seemed to be collecting antiquities. So I said, I'd like to go out there to see this after we found the cave. And we looked around for nearly 2 weeks. We couldn't find any cave. And I got really disheartened, and I said to my driver, Abdul, I said, I've wasted nearly 17 years, whatever it was, looking for this Ark of the Covenant. And although Joyce has given me all these landmarks, we haven't found anything that resembled. She told, as I mentioned, she says, the landmark's going to be a freestanding cave, what she drew. I'll just recap in case people haven't listened to the first part. And behind it would be a pyramid-shaped hill, flat top. In front of it would be dried up river. There'd be 2 entrances to the cave, be sand filled, and there'd be all skeleton bones around it. And on one side of the cave, there's going to be a huge tree in the shape of a huge rock in the shape of a tree. Couldn't find any cave, and I was disheartened. I said to Abdul, I've wasted all this time. I'm going to go back. I've neglected my family, my wife, my friends so much to go and concentrating all these years, internet looking, talking to people, doing this, doing that, researching and a whole lot of stuff which I haven't even discussed it so far. I also worked on Atlantis and many other things which I've been doing, which have been my book or CD, what we're going to make. I'll discuss that at the end of the show. And I said, if anyone's going to find it, Abdul, I said, you've got more chance of finding than me. And he laughed. You know, I'm looking for a cave. He didn't know too much what was in it or anything, but he just knew the cave and the landmark. And I fell asleep. I said, just take me off to the Bahrain Oasis. At least I can see that while I'm here. I don't have to go to Egypt anymore. My life is finished out here. I'm going to carry on my own life and do the things I want to do. Other things I should be doing.
You've basically given up, Gerry, yeah? At that point, you've basically given up.
Yeah, I've given up. I've just given up. I mean, all years of work, I just threw it all out the window. Anyhow, we're driving to the Bahrain Oasis. He set his course there. And after a few minutes, I don't know how long it was, he's shaking me. He says, Gerry, wake up. I found the cave. He says, there's all bones around it. I says, Abdul, this is a dream. I'm having another dream. I says, like the other guy, I said, pinch me. See if I'm awake here. I said, I must be sleeping. He said, no, look. I stepped out the vehicle, and there was a cave, and it's exactly, you saw the picture of it, didn't you, in the drawing? Oh. It was exactly like this psychic had drawn. She'd never been to Egypt. She wouldn't have got out there anyway, and she went to Egypt. She drew a cave, was what I had found exactly the same shape, the same contours and everything, freestanding. I said to him, I think we found the cave. I want to take a picture of it from a distance. And I got my little camera moving, took a video clip, and we drove about a few hundred yards away. And I started panning from left to right, and as I panned across, I stopped it at the cave. Behind it was this pyramid-shaped mountain with a flat top, which you saw the picture of.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I thought, I found the landmark. And I said to Abdel, what's all this brushwood seems to be in front of the cave near it? He said, well, that must have been a dried up wadi. I said, what's a wadi? A river. He said, must have been thousands of years ago, a river. I thought, that's fantastic. So we went back to the cave, and I said, we can't stay here because it's too windy. We'll have to camp behind the cave. He said, you go around. I picked up some of the bones. I took some back with me, actually. These skeleton bones, I didn't know what they were. And I'm looking around. He calls back. He says, I found a place where we can camp. Behind the cave, there's another entrance. I thought, wow, that's another landmark, she told me. And he said, we'll camp here. But when we camp, he says, you'll have to sleep in my truck, in the van, in saw before. And he'll sleep he's got a one-man tent. He'll sleep beside me on the tent. He said, we make camp here, and we'll light a fire, because it was getting dark. Dusk was setting in. And he says, you go and get some brushwood from the twigs or whatever we can find. He said, we light a fire. And I went out to the other side of this cave where we were, picking up the brushwood. And lo and behold, I looked up, and staring at me, or I'm standing there, was a huge rock, enormous, in the shape of a tree. I had every landmark Joyce had told me. So this has to be the cave, whether the Ark, or it could be an ancient copy, or something important has to be there. It has to be there.
Yeah.
And there's no way. It has to. We have to look in the area. And the only way we're going to look, we can't dig. I don't have a shovel with me. We wouldn't know where to dig because the cave's freestanding, because it must have been enormous thousands of years ago in a mountainside over the earthquakes or wind erosion or whatever it is. It's now got small and just freestanding.
Yeah, probably the size of the plateau itself, couldn't it? Really. When you see the picture, that could only be just be the tip of the iceberg, as it were. That could be a whole complex. The way that the thousands of years of sand have covered things.
Sand covers things. Well, with the Sphinx was under sand. I mean, when Napoleon found it, apparently only the head was there. Yeah. The rest of the body didn't even know. They just thought the head sticking up.
Yeah, but so sketches, yeah.
The sand does all the covering.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he went into his tent, his little tent, and I slept in the truck. Middle of the night, I'm fast asleep. He's banging on the window. What's going on in there, Jerry? What's going on? And he woke me up. I said, what's going on there, Bill? What are you talking about? He said, I heard voices in the truck, in there with you. He says, I said, there's no one here. How can anyone be here? He said, I heard people talking in there. And you was talking, and there was another voice in there talking. Who's in there? I said, I didn't tell him I did channeling or anything like that. I didn't want to frighten the guy. I said, go back to sleep. I must have been sleeping in my sleep. He said, but it wasn't your voice. I said, don't worry, go to sleep. That morning I woke up, and the whole story unfolded. Whether Mosek had given it to me in my sleep or channeled it or whatever it was, apparently he had stolen the Ark of the Covenant with a band of men and was taking it to be sold for gold. They never had money in those days, I suppose, to a man in the Bahrain oasis. And when he was taking it down there, this was the cave he stopped at. Apparently this cave was a cave where anyone en route from northern Egypt, say Cairo, where it was up there in the towns, it was a route where one would be a stopping place. It was a big cave there. And apparently when we went out looking, I forgot to tell you, I did pass a huge tree in the desert, which was an acacia wood tree, and it had, remember I told you that the psychic in in the first part, if anyone wants to recap it, I met a psychic named Manora in Israel.
Yeah.
Through my channeling, I said I'm going to pass a big tree with a lot of branches on, and this was the one. I got a picture of it. In fact, I'll send that to you. You can put it on your whatever, your website or whatever. It's quite unusual trailer. It was amazing. It was in the middle of the desert, nothing around for miles and miles except this tree sticking up there. Anyhow, apparently his men, Mosaic overheard his men conspiring against him, saying, well, they're not going to get much money, and they brought this ark all the way down there. So he poisoned them all. And before the poison set in, there was a man with a spear who was guarding the actual entrance. In fact, Joyce Morgan had drew another drawing of a man with a spear, which I'll send you, put that on your website. That was another drawing. She didn't know what it was, but she drew a man in the entrance of the ark in the back, the cave in the background, and he's holding the spear. So possibly that this was the guy. How she picked that up, I don't know. But when the poison hadn't set into this guy, and this guy speared Mosaic, and then he died afterwards. So they all died in this area and buried there somewhere under the sand. When the Ark of the Covenant all got covered over, the Ark never got to this man who was in charge of this Bahrain oasis.
You're listening to Critical Mass Radio. Now, it's our turn.
Okay, folks, welcome back. That's the second part of the interview with Gerry. We'll play the final part shortly. I couldn't have got away with playing it. Raiders of the Lost Ark again. Got to, haven't you? Got to. It's one of my favourites anyway. Just a couple of points on that. Believe it or not, this story gets even more bizarre. As I was listening to Gerry telling me, and I was referencing the pictures and the drawings as he was relating it to me, and I still found it hard to believe, because there's just so much, you can't put this down to coincidence. There's just too much, and over a span of years, with so many different people in different parts of the world, it's just, for me, whatever may be lying in that cave or underneath that cave, I've got a feeling that there is something there. Now, Gerry admits himself that it could be a copy. And if all of the stories true about Mosaic and everything else, that he may have unwittingly stolen a copy, because I've got references in scriptures from thousands of years ago. Obviously they're not thousands of years old, they're just references from them, that there was more than one ark anyway. So that being the case, and if it was an actual machine or whatever it was used for, obviously it must have had some unbelievable powers, then logic would say that, well, let's make more of them in case this one breaks down. Or if it was its providence was divine, then maybe it wasn't possible to make another one. I've got a feeling there's a great connection between the Ark of the Covenant and, if anybody's aware of the granite sarcophagus in the King's Chamber in Khufu's pyramid, the Great Pyramid as it's referred to, because of the dimensions of the sarcophagus, of that they say it's a sarcophagus. I wouldn't believe any nonsense about pyramids being burial tombs, absolute rubbish, but that's my opinion, by the way. I just like to question conventional wisdom. But the dimensions of the so-called sarcophagus or chest in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid of Giza is more to the same exact dimensions that are given in the Old Testament in the Bible of the Ark of the Covenant. And it seems to me there's some form of maybe a power grid or something, but that's for another programme as well. I've got on maybe in the future about the pyramids being a grand power grid. But the second, there is a picture up on Gerry's site, at the bottom picture, it's got Gerry's Arkquest. If you go into that, there's a picture of the layout, like an overview from the Great Pyramid looking down, I think it is, or looking up towards the pyramids. And you can clearly see the Sphinx it's looking up towards the pyramid. So the Sphinx is on, that we know of, is on the left-hand side. Now there's a mound on the right-hand side. Now I don't know whether Gerry actually goes into it, why he believes that there should be another Sphinx there. I'll leave that in case I spoil it, but it's a very logical reason, and when you hear it, you'll go, yeah, it makes sense why there should be another Sphinx there. And all the people who know me, I've done a lot of stuff on Egypt, ancient Egypt, etc. And in all, I'm surrounded by pictures now and books, and in all the depictions, there's always a king and a queen. That's just a little clue to why Gerry thinks that there should be another Sphinx there. But anyway, Sphinx there. But anyway, if you go into the site, you can see where he's laid it out, and you can see a mound that does look very similar to the first Sphinx. But he did mention Dr. Zawi Hawass as well, who for the last 30 odd years, I think, has been the head of antiquities, the Supreme Council of Antiquities in Egypt. Just to bring you up to date on him, he's a wily old fox, Zawi Hawass. Nothing seems to go on in Egypt with regard to any digs or any excavations, anything, unless it goes through him, and he basically gets his little, I wouldn't say cut, I'm not saying financial cut, but he's always there and thereabouts. Last year he was thrown in jail as a collaborator to the Mubarak government. His lawyers got him off. I think after 3 months, he spent 3 or 4 months in jail, got him out. And the last I heard, he was trying to fight to get reinstated as head of antiquities. And these are some of the characters that Gerry, an ordinary man, not an archaeologist or anything like that, no academic background, these are the type of people, and he meets. There's one in there that had to cut out. Anyone who's familiar with any of these books, the people that was Robert Bouval. There was another one. There's a couple more that don't come to mind at the minute, but I mean the people that he's encountered through this, as I say, with no background at all, it's absolutely unbelievable. And the pictures, I think you can see from the drawing at Joystone, I think I mentioned this earlier, drawing at Joystone, which is next to my grid, on the top row, the one in the middle, and then on the right, Gerry's photograph that his driver took outside the freestanding cave. It's unbelievable. It's uncanny, the resemblance in both. Even down to, she never said that would be a figure, but to me it does seem to look like a small figure, like the scribble on the drawing, where Gerry's actually standing. It is, it's just weird to me. But anyway, we play the final part. Hope you're enjoying the show. Just give me 2 seconds to find it, and yeah, here's the final part. Gerry's quest for the Ark of the Covenant.
When I went to the bar, we went on to the Bahrain Oasis afterwards, and I found out that to the Bahrain Oasis, the man in charge was a guy, actually, his actual name, they can look on the internet, was Dijed Konsu F. Ank. And I found out that he lived or reigned in the 26th dynasty. Now, the 26th dynasty is 685 to 525 BC. So that was the time when Solomon's temple was there. So it verified that he could have been the man who wanted to get the Ark of the Covenant, because it was the same time when the Ark was in the temple before it was destroyed. Yeah. So this more or less proves that it could be that, well, verified, they couldn't have proved it. But then I did further examination when I got back, and I found that this guy Dijed was not only the man in charge and the wealthy man, but he was the high priest of Egypt. So he would have wanted the Ark more than anything else, knowing the high priest of Israel had the Ark. He would have wanted it for his own worship or whatever. So it seems that it was true that Moses was taken to him, and it never got there. Anyhow, I went back to Cairo, and remember, there was only one other man with me when we found the cave. As Joyce said, there only be me and another person, just me and my driver. We went back to Cairo, and when we went back, I was going to see my friend Adele, and I went to see him. but he wasn't there that day because he was away, so they said he won't be there for a couple of days, and I hadn't been to Alexandria. I thought I'd make a trip to Alexandria, and there's only two Alexandrias in about 200 miles away on the coast, Mediterranean coast, and there's only one road going out there. You can either drive there, which costs you a lot of money, and take a lot of time with traffic, or you can go to train. There's two trains. Well, there was an early train, 8 o'clock, and a 9 o'clock train. They were fast non-stop trains. And you have to book a ticket the day before. So I booked a ticket for the 8 o'clock train. They said it was completely full, and here's a ticket for the 9 o'clock train. So we got the 9 o'clock train ticket. Next day I got up very early because the traffic, as I said, was horrendous in Cairo. And I went to the station. When I got there, in the platform, there's a train ready to pull out to go to Alexandria. And I went on the train, and as I got on the train, the guy who was the ticket guy says, "You can't come on. This ticket is for the 9 o'clock train." I said, "Well, I'm here now. Please let me on." He says, "There's no seats. The train is completely full. You have to take the next one. I'm very, very sorry." So I pulled out a £20 note, pushed it in his hand. I said, "Come on." I said, "I can go on the train. I'll save me a lot of time. I don't want to waste around." He says, "Even with your money, I don't want to take your money. I can't let you on." Train's just pulling out. He grabbed hold of me, my knapsack on my back, and he pulled me out. He says, "Come on you go. I feel sorry for you, but there's no seat. You'll have to sit on the floor." I said, "Fine." Gave him the £20. He wouldn't take it. So I shoved it in his pocket, and he must have known I could get it later on. I sat on the train. I went to go to the toilet. I walked down to the end of the corridor, and there was an empty seat. I thought, well, this is the guy who's gone into the bathroom, toilet. And I sat down waiting for him to come out. The guy came out and he walked into the next carriage. And I realised this was an empty seat. It was the only empty seat on the train. It was a miracle. Because so many synchronicities happen to me. It's unbelievable when you hear my story. And everybody in the train was Egyptian. But next to me was a woman who was not Egyptian. And she was reading a book. I think it was about Atlanta or something. I don't know. And I struck up conversation with her. And I started telling her that about the Ark and the Covenant, and she thought, interesting story. And I ended up saying, I'm looking for somebody who's possibly in the American embassy or somewhere to I can contact, because if the Ark's found that people have got to, I can't do nothing with it. It's got to be embassies and big government officials to take care of what's got to happen to it. And she says, I work for the American embassy. I said, what? I said, this is another coincidence. Out of the whole train, I'm not supposed to get on the train. Here I am sitting next to you. She says, her husband is one of the people in charge of the embassy. I said, better still. She says, but you don't want anybody from the embassy. They won't help you. They've got nothing to do with all this. What you need to speak to someone, maybe in the United Nations or UNESCO. They're the people you need. She said, when you get back from Alexandria, see if you can meet someone from United Nations. I said, well, I didn't know much about, I was not into politics. I said, who's United Nations? She said, well, the guy who used to run it is in Egypt. His name is Brutus Ghali. You probably know him. Look him up. Yeah. He was the ex-Secretary General of the United Nations. She said, if you can get through to his office, maybe you can write in. He'll never read it, but there's a chance that someone there might look at it and find it interesting. He's an important guy. He won't talk to anybody. I said, fine. So when we got back to Cairo, I went out with my friend Mohammed Akar, I told you I got friendly with, and I said to him, you know, maybe I can go out and take a, you know, do I know anybody out there? He said, well, he knows someone. Does he know anybody? He says he got his mobile phone at 10 o'clock at night, and he phoned through to the ex-president or someone of Egypt. He knew everybody. This guy is amazing. And like a walking encyclopedia, knowing people. And he said, tomorrow morning I'll get you the address where you've got to go to. And the next morning he gave me a phone number, and we tried it. I tried it. And I said to him, well, you dial it, because I may talk Arabic. He said, no, you do it. It's your baby. You do it. And nobody could speak English there. And I dialed it again, and a guy spoke to me in English, and he said, can I help you? And I said, yeah. I said, I need to write a letter in about I think I found the Ark and the Covenant site. And he said, where? I says, in the Western Desert. He said, well, when you write in, who do you want to write to? I said, I don't mind. I said, anybody. I said, who do you think I should write to? And he says, well, the head man there is Bruce Pascal. I says, yes, I know that. I says, but will he read it? He says, I think he will. I says, well, how can you be sure? He says, because I am Bruce Pascal. I really fell off the chair in the telephone. I said, what? He says, can you come to see me tomorrow? I said, I can't. I'm going back to Spain tomorrow. He said, I want you here within the hour. Come over by 1 o'clock. It was 11 or 12 o'clock by then. So I went over to see him. I took Mohammed Bakr with me, and we discussed the role of the Ark. And he said, you know, if it's found on Egyptian soil, it could belong to Egypt. And then I said to him, well, if the role of the Ark goes around the world, then if it can be arranged by governments, I don't know who, what, where, and when, that if the Ark could go out of Egypt, then Egypt would get a percentage of the millions that the Ark would produce from donations. And that would give an incentive to get the Ark out, because it would be well publicised, and it can go out of Egypt, and once a year it would go back to Jerusalem in an auditorium there, so 3 great religions can see it and discuss their religions and all that. Because you've got to remember, years ago that there was only one place of worship in Jerusalem, and that was Solomon's Temple. They didn't know other places of worship around the world, so now the Ark can go everywhere for people to see it, and as I said before, that people can see it in auditoriums all around the world, or even copies of it. So he thought that was a good idea, and we kept in touch. I went back to the Giza Plateau, and I saw my friend Adele, and I said, you know, this second thing, can I do some examining? So he gave me his truck with the driver, and I did some measurements out for the distance and all that. And I said, you know, looks like in the second Sphinx. I've done a lot of looking on the internet. No one seems to examine this now. I said, can I talk to Dr. Hawass? Dr. Hawass is in America. He kept going back at that for some reason. He said that there's only one man around, a guy called Mark Lerner. Have you heard of Mark Lerner?
Yeah, the archaeologist Mark Lerner, yeah. He's the archaeologist. He did the mapping of the Giza Plateau.
Yeah. He was with Hawass when they were both with the Edgar Casey Foundation.
Yeah.
So he got friendly with Hawass, and he did all the work out there. He said, well, Dr. Mark Lerner has been here for 2 weeks doing some excavations, doesn't know what he's been doing. He sent a report to Hawass when he gets back to America, and he's leaving for America that afternoon. I said, well, can I have his phone number? Let me talk to him wherever he is, in his hotel room. So he gave me a number, and I got through to Mark Lerner. I said, Dr. Lerner, I says, I'm not an archaeologist, I'm with Adele's office, and I've done some discussion that Adele thinks maybe I'm right, but I think there's another Sphinx on a mound there. He went mad. He raised the bloody roof where I was. He started screaming and shouting, there's no such thing, you're not an archaeologist, I don't want to hear this rubbish. And he threw the phone down on me. Right? I thought to myself, why did he get so aggravated at this? I'm talking to Adele, and about half an hour later, in burst a guy with red in the face, and it was Mark Lerner. I recognised him from his pictures. And he started screaming and shouting in Arabic, I didn't understand the word, at Adele. And Adele was pointing to me that I was Gerry, the guy who called him. And he looked at me, he said, I don't want to hear any rubbish from you. Then he walked out. Now, why should he have gone all the way down to, if he was getting a flight, why couldn't he have just phoned Adele and said something to him? I found out he was annoyed that Adele has been helping me. He must have heard that Adele lent me the truck to do this, that and the other. He must have heard that Adele also agreed there could be, and then agrees that there could be another Sphinx out there. Apparently, I felt that Mark Lerner knew there's another Sphinx, and I've contacted Hawass many times afterwards, and he didn't want to know about another Sphinx. He says, I don't want to hear all this stuff. Apparently, if there is another Sphinx, the reason why they wouldn't want it found is it might prove that the Egyptians didn't build the Sphinx or the pyramids. and all the work they've been doing over the years to be thrown out the window.
Yeah.
I realise now that we have to get to the Ark of the Covenant to find the Ark. And the second Sphinx could be our stepping stone. In other words, to go out to find the area to dig, and we won't dig, someone's got to do it more official, for the Ark and look around the cave and outside the cave, because it could be inside or outside. We don't know how big the cave was when it was there, so it could be outside. We need ground-penetrated radar. You heard of that?
Yeah.
And that can detect some shadows or some abnormalities under the sand. We might be able to find it there. We don't know how deep. It can't be that deep. And the only one with you also need the ground-penetrated radar to look at this mound to see if there's another Sphinx there. And if they can detect another Sphinx, then all they'd have to do is, or an abnormality that looks like, or the rock or whatever, then all they'd have to do is drill a very 1/8 of an inch pilot hole down and see it tapping at different areas and see where there's a body of a Sphinx under there before they'd actually dig. And of course, if there is another Sphinx, it's certainly going to help Egypt because their economy has gone down, the tourism's gone down, no one's got these problems. Another Sphinx would be a bonanza. Everybody will go and see it whether there's problems there or not. Archaeologists around the world want to see this other Sphinx uncovered. So although these people, a lot of people don't want it found, it would certainly help Egypt if it is found. I contacted some people from the British Society of Dowsers in London or somewhere, and I found 4 or 5 of their dowsers, and without knowing what was there, I didn't even give them my name. I sent them an email under a fictitious name, and I said to them, here's a picture of the Giza Plateau. Here's the Sphinx. There's a mound. Can you dowse the mound? And 4 of them dowsed it and said, there's another Sphinx there. Mm-hmm. So whether how good they are, I don't know. And I didn't ask them what was there. I just said, what do you think could be under the mound? There's another Sphinx. And the last guy who did it, also from British Dowsing, he not only said there's another Sphinx there, but he says it's smaller than the big Sphinx. And I said to him, why is it smaller? And he said, because it's female. And I thought, he's right, because the majority of people believe that the Sphinx on the Giza Plateau is male. Yeah. And all these food dogs around the world are always male and female. So it made sense that it would be
and the Sphinx as well, the image, the face on the Sphinx is believed to be that of Khufu, Pharaoh, and you usually find, going back, that's the old kingdom that when the pyramids are supposed to have been built, but you usually find in similar architecture that you will have the Pharaoh and his queen. That is standardised right way through them, yet there's only one there. So you probably I'd say you were right.
Dr. Schoff and Anthony West, some people I've heard of, they wrote a book and they believe that the Sphinx was all and the pyramids are all underwater, which is true, because when I was out in the desert, I went on top of the mountains when I was looking at this cave, looking around, and I found fossils of fish and stuff like that there. So we know it was all underwater. In fact, in the desert, near this Wadi Rayyan, they found actual skeletons of whales. So we know it was all, there must have been this great flood of whatever there was talk about in the Bible and all that stuff. So it was underwater. And when you look at the Sphinx, I say it's the elevation is about 40 feet or 40 meters down, offhand, I don't know, below the pyramid. If you go on a straight line from the Sphinx to across the desert in a straight line, then it's under the actual pyramid, and it could have been guarding. This may be Ark of the Covenant or something in some chambers way underneath it. We don't know. I mean, all this got to be examined. Anyhow, we're now looking for an archaeologist. We have to have permission to go to take ground penetrating radar and look at this second Sphinx. And I can help because I know quite a lot of people out there. Dr. West says at the time he's no longer there. But he says, I can't do anything because I'm not an archaeologist. I'll have to work with an archaeologist who's affiliated with a university or institute. to get permits. I did find an American who was affiliated with a university, and he said he would look for the second Sphinx. He believed it could be there. But he wanted to use his own man to do ground-penetrated radar. And I said no, because I've met a Christian who is an archaeologist, not an archaeologist, who's got ground-penetrated equipment in Italy. He's Italian. And I trust this guy more than anyone else who could do this work. And he knows that I want to look for, not so much, although the Sphinx we've got to look at, is to go out in the desert. And he says if he can get a permit to get his ground penetrating radar into Egypt to look for the Sphinx, then we can go out into the desert. He said within a day he can check out the area of the cave, and he can find out whether there's a shadow of something oblong, which is a box of the art. He can't tell what they are. And also if it's made of metal and possibly gold. He could do all that, but we need a permit, because he went out a few years ago to Israel looking for some things for one of the archaeologists, and he never had a permit, and the Israelis nearly confiscated all his expensive equipment. He said, I'm only going to go if I can get that. So my main work now is to find an archaeologist, and this is why I'm doing these radio shows. Hopefully there's an archaeologist out there who will go to my website, which is www.gerrysarquest.com, gerrysarquest.com. And if you go on that website, or everybody can go on the website, look down on the first page, and you'll see 2 YouTubes, which is the story what I've just been talking about, plus a lot more, because it lasts a lot longer. And you'll see all the photographs and pictures, which George has just seen on it. Have a look at that, and go to a place called, on top, a heading of research. Look down there, and you'll see a picture of the Sphinx and the pyramid, and you'll see where this other Sphinx mound is. And a little further down, you can read, I think, a 14 or 20-page article with a lot of pictures describing and everything else where there's another Sphinx buried under there. It could be. So what we're looking for now is mainly this archaeologist. If anyone who wants to email me and chat about all this stuff, I'll be willing to talk to them. But the main thing I keep emphasising is an archaeologist. Yeah. So thank you, George, for letting me have any questions at all, George, before we finish?
Yeah, just to comment on that, as you say, archaeologist, if we can find one who has some affiliation to a university or some association like that. And also, what you haven't mentioned is there's a book that you've been trying to get published called Arkquest, that you co-wrote with another gentleman, I believe. It's in the making.
Okay, well, I've started writing a book. Well, not writing, but we finished the book. It's been actually edited for publication. But what we're doing now, I've met a lot of people through these radio shows, and two of them, one was named Max and Wendy. She's a psychic. They're in America.
I know Max and Wendy, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of other people. Won't go into name, but thank them all, including you. And they've helped me quite a lot. And what they're doing, they're putting together, when they get my book, this Wendy's going to read it out and put it onto an audio CD. People can listen to the whole book and see all the pictures while she's reading it out. It's about 350 pages. And on the CDs, they can also download it to read it on their computer or even print it out. And then they're making a DVD, CD-ROM, for about 2 or 2.5 hours of a whole story about me and my search, showing you all the other stuff about Atlantis, what I was doing, and everything else. And they're going to put the 2 out, and we're going to put them for sale on my website, on their website, and it's probably going to cost about $35 US dollars. I don't know what that is in pounds, not a lot, for both of them. Yeah. And if anybody's interested in them, then send me an email and go to my website and send me an email. My email is gerrysarkquest@yahoo.com. Same as the other one, GERRYS Arkquest@yahoo.com. Send me an email if they want these things, but the money we make from them is not going into our pockets. It's going to do this research, because obviously if a university wants to get involved, they need funding. As you know, we're looking for an archaeologist, so if anybody's out there who is an archaeologist or knows of an archaeologist or association with any university that does archaeology for Egypt, contact me. Have a look at my website, which is www.gerrysarkquest.com. That's Gerry with a G. GERRYSARKQUEST.com. On that website, the first page you're going to see, below the first page, is 2 YouTube presentations, part 1 and part 2, and you'll be able to listen to and watch the whole record and see all the pictures. If you go under the word research, you'll see the big pyramid and the Sphinx, and where I've indicated another Sphinx would be. Look under that a little bit and you can click on to read the article. I think it's about 14 or 20 page article with all pictures about another Sphinx being there. And if they believe that the archaeologists are interested, contact me. I can be contacted by email at Gerrys, GERRYSARKQUEST @yahoo.com. GerrysArkQuest@yahoo.com. Thank you very, very much, George, for having me, and thank you for you're looking at all the pictures and seeing everything down there, and for all your support and the support of hopefully a lot of your listeners, and hope you enjoyed the show.
Oh, the pleasure's been mine, Gerry. Absolutely brilliant, fascinating stuff, especially for me, my personal interest with ancient Egypt and the Ark as well. And we put it out, and I'm in touch with a couple of people as well. I'm trying to work on that. We're getting an archaeologist. I'd just like to thank you, obviously, on behalf of myself, and I think the listeners that it's fascinating.
You take care, and I'll give you any updates. You take care, and hopefully this is all going to be found and help planet by looking for the Ark and helping Egypt with another Sphinx.
Brilliant.
Take care.
Thank you, Gerry, and I'll catch up with you off here.
Okay, have a good one. Bye. God bless.
Bye, Gerry. Okay, we're going to wrap up now. I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. And whatever anybody's thoughts or opinions are on the relevance or the relevance, should say, or the veracity of the Ark of the Covenant, whether it exists, it did exist or doesn't exist. I like to believe that it does exist, and it will be found someday, because from all the readings and research I've done, whoever does discover it will only be able to draw on any of its powers, if it has any, which I believe it does, if they're of good spirit and good heart. And I think if it fell into the hands of anybody evil for some reason, I don't think it would operate in any form. That's just my opinion, that's just my belief. I hope that's the way. Okay, really enjoyed tonight, apart from that last part that I never heard anything, but hope all of you enjoyed the show, and you'll be able to look on podcast. And I'd like to thank Gerry. I know I thanked him in the clip, but I'd like to thank him. I'm speaking to Gerry tomorrow, and there's more revelations that have come out since that interview. But thanks for listening to the show tonight. Remember, just as soon as I finish, Paul and Andy will be on with the Unpenned show. So I'd just like to say thanks a lot for listening. Hope to see you on Thursday. And I'm going to finish with a song by Jeff Buckley. Make up.